5 minutes. I'll give it another 2, then we'll begin. So basically what I'm going to do here is run through all the Celtic squad. I'm going to rate them as I see fit now that the window's closed. Rate them as I see fit now that the window's closed. You might agree, you might disagree. You can even have some input. What I want you to do is get involved in this. As members of the all-in tier, as members of the exclusive tier, I want you to get involved. Doesn't mean to say I'm going to listen, but I want you to get involved. So, for example, first up, Christopher Ajer. Let me know what you think. Let me know where he belongs. Let me know in the comments. And we'll go along together. And what we'll do is we'll discuss it. Each player will discuss it for a couple of minutes between us, and then we'll agree that I'm right. And it'll go there. And also what I've done, handily, is I've created this tier maker. I'm going to post it up, post a link, and you can go on and you can make your own tiers. So I think this is a good point. This is a good place to begin. We're just going to start. Okay, so first up, make sure I've got my cursors right, Christopher Ajer. Now, I must apologise, I'm going to be doing a lot of looking away from the camera at the moment. Christopher Ajer. Me and Chris go way back. There was a time when Christopher Ajer first broke into the squad that he was getting rave reviews, Christopher Ajer, and I try to temper that a wee bit on the podcast, just by saying, look, he's a good player, but he's got a wee bit to go. He's got a wee bit to go before he reaches, say, elite. People were saying he was elite as soon as he walked in the door, kind of thing. Well, as soon as he broke through. But last season, in my defence, I did pick him as my young player of the year before the season and after the season started. So I think Christopher Ajer gained a lot of experience last year playing for Celtic, especially in Europe. I think he's grown into the role. And I think Christopher Ajer, well, what do you guys think? Where do you think Ajer belongs in this chat? He's a strong contender for good, a strong contender for elite. I think we can rule out all the other ones. And for me, in my opinion, Chris D thinks he belongs in good. Christopher Ajer's an elite member of the Celtic squad. Christopher Ajer is an elite member. Jerry Tinney says he'll start most games. Good for Ajer. B, says Jordan Murphy. B, I'll need to let the chat catch up. I've just noticed that it takes a couple of minutes for the chat to come through. Good. Does anyone else agree with me? He's an integral part of the defence, says Christopher Ajer is probably the best central defender we've got at the club. How do you like that? No, for me, Christopher Ajer is an elite member of the Celtic squad. Remember, these comparisons are contained within the Celtic squad. So we're not comparing Christopher Ajer to elite footballers out with Scotland, out with into Europe. I'm not saying he's a Van Dijk when I say he's elite. What I'm doing is I'm ranking the Celtic squad here. And for me, Christopher Ajer, so many people saying B. Does anyone else out there think Christopher Ajer's elite? Ross Macca, 67 music. There you go. Ross Macca thinks he's elite. Undoubtedly, Christopher Ajer is an elite member of the Celtic squad. So, what I'm doing here, just to reiterate the point, Philip Bradley says, I agree, he's our best centre-back. Just to reiterate the point, what I'm doing is I'm looking at all the players the Celtic squad have got at the moment, and I'm rating them. Contained within the Celtic squad. Duco James says, you're right for a change, Jamie. Your name is Mud, Duco James. Your name is Mud. Away back to Neil McCann's house. Like that, with the blogs about Neil McCann. We all know the truth now. You've been outed. On his game, he's elite. Consistency is what puts him in good. Ajer could be A, but he's got a way to go. No, I'm sorry. You're disagreeing with Jamie on this one. And that's fine. You're allowed to disagree. Incidentally, this isn't the opinion of 20-minute Tims. This isn't the other guys. If Melly was here, he'd probably want to agree with me. Some people do agree. This is the opinion of James Von Doom. Next up, Tom Rogic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys start on Tom Rogic before I do. I'll give it a couple of seconds to let you think about it. Tom Rogic's Celtic career, if I drew a graph of his Celtic career, it would be here, like that, peaked, and in my opinion, it's kind of there. I said on the podcast last season that I think Dan Tosney wants his Patreon money back, no refunds. I said on the podcast last season that I think we've maybe seen the best of Tom Rogic. Jerry Tinney thinks Tom Rogic belongs C for Charlie Forbes. I think we've maybe seen the best of Tom Rogic. Obviously, he had that move lined up. Neil Lennon said he wanted to keep him. Philip Bradley says F. Darren says C. The C's are rolling in. Yeah, Neil Lennon says he wanted to keep Tom Rogic. He's barely featured. And I worry. Tom Rogic struggles to keep himself fit enough to play games as it is, but we're in a global pandemic. Tom Rogic, for me, a lot of people are saying C, can contribute. So, elite is obviously the best. Good is good. Can contribute as someone like, they're going to start some games, not all games. They're going to be a featured starter. Sub only. D is someone who's going to, like, for instance, Klimala has been, most of his games are going to be on the bench. Like that. Scott Bain, as a spoiler alert here. And F is just someone that'll do nothing. Just to clarify a wee bit. C. Chris D says C has to be C now due to the contributions of late, but it pains me not to see his elite. Rogic D, he's not going to start in the midfielders we've got. And I've got to say, Senator Doherty has said C. Nah, not for me. I'm in camp D. Tom Rogic this season, for me, is getting a D. Sub only. I think most of his Celtic appearances will be from the bench or on the bench. Someone made the comment earlier on. Kendo, the holy Kendo. D, sub only, isn't going to start in front of the midfielders we have, and that's just a fact. Especially in the 3-5-2 that Neil Lennon favours. There's too many players in front of the pecking order for him. There's too many players in front of him in the pecking order. Stephen Harvey says, I've uncharmed myself. D. Kieran Gallagher says, James Von Lennon. So that's where we're at. Tom Rogic, uncharmed. I get you, mate. I know what you mean. So Tom Rogic, for me, is a D. His contribution this season, mostly for the bench. If he came into me as James Von Lennon and says, all right, Gaffer, where do you see me this season? I'd say, look, a couple of guys ahead of you. Truthfully, you're going to be on the bench most of it, but show me what you can do in training. Next up, Anthony Rouston. Just stick him right there. Any complaints? Any complaints about where I've put? He's redeemed himself, correct. Lovely player. But there's a tramp near my bit with better fitness levels. Tom Rogic is just not his work enough, as Stephen coined. The holy Kendo, another spot on choice. Thanks, mate. I'm glad somebody's agreeing with me. I don't think anyone can have any complaint. When I was coming up with the graphics for this, actually, I went on to the Celtic website, obviously, and stole all these took all these wee pictures. And I was shocked to see that Anthony Ralston was still at the club. Absolutely shocked. I thought he'd gone. G says Dan Tosney. There is the G. Mark's still talking about Tom Rogic. We moved on. F, and we move on. Congratulations, Louis. You're 100% correct. Next up, Callum McGregor. And just as quick as I put Anthony Ralston in F, where's Callum McGregor going? It's right there, isn't it? Neymar says Ralston is elite. There can be no argument that Callum McGregor is an elite member of this Celtic team. Callum McGregor, let me think about this here. Okay, Callum McGregor is one of the top 2 players at the club. And on showings so far this season, I maybe think he might be the best player at the club at the moment. A or we right, A+++. Easy. McGregor is so important, says Kieran Gall. He's a top class midfielder, an elite footballer at Celtic. But if you take Callum McGregor out of Celtic, it's my belief that Callum McGregor would get a start in every team competing in the English Premier League at the moment, aside from maybe Man City or Liverpool. He's that good a player. And I would be amazed if he saw his whole contract out at Celtic. Kieran Gallagher says, I agree, him and Eddie are the best players. 100%. That's how I think. What's that pinging noise? Can anyone else hear a pinging noise? I can't hear it in my headphones. Dan Tosney says, unfortunately, I can't stay for the rest of it. It looks like a good laugh. Any chance of uploading the video? Yeah, I'll upload the video. I'll put this up on Patreon/YouTube for those of you who can't sit through the whole thing or didn't get a chance to see the whole thing. So, no problem, Dan. That's fine. Thanks very much for joining me on the first one of these. If Calmac gets COVID, I'd be worried for Saturday. That's why he's elite for me. Our players are dropping like flies at the moment, and it worries me. Connor Hazard, we'll just stick him in there, shall we? F will do nothing. The pinging noise is the chat updating. There you go. Can I fix it by pressing this? It must be coming through my speakers and through my microphone. I just thought it was through my headphones. Okie doke. Who have we got next? A little bit of housekeeping there. Moi Elyounoussi. I see YouTube messages coming in. That's what the pinging noise is. Make me para about this sound setup. It's always so sensitive. Okay, back to the matter at hand. Moi Elyounoussi. Where does Moi Elyounoussi fit in this? Get your comments in before I make the official judgment. I really should be sitting in Elite, says Jerry Tinney. One of these judges' wigs. You know, the wigs with a hammer. Next season. When I do this next season, that's what we'll be on. B for Moi, says Kieran Gallagher. Philip Bradley says B. Ross Macca says B. B by Aidan McKee. Elite Sean Bradley says, I appreciate. Good. B for Moi. It's a B. For me, it's a B. Moi Elyounoussi was part of the transfer window there that we know, which was fantastic in my opinion. One of the best transfer windows that we've ever had. Certainly in my time watching Celtic, the level of quality brought in was unparalleled. Our worst signing, no matter who you think it is, our worst signing was orders of magnitude better than anybody else in this league signed. Peter got the checkbook out big time, right? And that's fine. Moi Elyounoussi was first in the door to a lot of fanfare. Melly especially was really, really happy about Moi Elyounoussi joining. I was happy about Moi Elyounoussi joining. I thought he was terrific last season. But my opinion of him is slightly changing a wee bit. Louis159 says Moi probably a B, especially if 3-5-2 is a permanent fixture. And that's what it comes down to for me. I think in this 3-5-2, he's kind of struggled a wee bit to fit in, to make a contribution. And I just don't think he's reaching those. That's annoying me a wee bit there. I can see it sticking out. I just don't think he's reaching those heights that we really. I mean, you're wanting him to come in, bang, make an instant impact. And I know the performances have been lacklustre recently, but for me, Moi Elyounoussi is a B. Jerry Tinney says no. The Holy Kendall says definitely get goals and assists, but isn't a guaranteed start. He's a B. Duco James says elite player, but only good the way he's being used. Charlie Forbes thinks he's elite. Ricardo Gorvin. You guys are torn. Mark McGugan agrees. I can see that you guys are torn. Mikey Johnston was... I happen to rate Mikey Johnston. I think he's a good young player. Setback with injuries. So my thinking here is to get back to the level he was at last season. There's a bit of work there to do for Mikey Johnston to get back to the levels he was at last season. But this is one season on. So we need him to reach the level he was at and then kick on. And then kick on further. And I think that's a big ask. I think... Well, where do you guys think Mikey Johnston's going to be? Where do you think Mikey Johnston's going to... I think it's a big ask for Mikey Johnston. A D there for Maiden. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. A D. Look, I am a Mikey Johnston fan. Sean Bradley thinks C. MJ should be C. People think Mikey Johnston's a B. Kieran Gallagher thinks he's a B. Sean Boy says H for hospital. D. He's overrated, said Philip Bradley. Are you related to Sean Bradley? Are you two related? Are you arguing with each other in this chat? I don't know if I could ever put him B. I think this season, Mikey Johnston is going to find himself sub-only. I think Ricardo Gorvin, D. I really like him, but don't know how he starts. D with the potential for C, says Senator Doherty. I'd agree with that. This is how I'd approach it with Mikey Johnston. See, you're a D, right? Not a derogatory term. You're the D, but there's potential for you. There's potential for you to push up into the C category. But for me, Mikey Johnston is D, sub only. That'll be Mikey Johnston's season this season, I think. Most of his contributions will come from the bench. Chris D says he can be good, but only probably coming off the bench this season if he can press and train. So D, yeah. Yeah, Mikey's a C at best, but behind Elyounoussi, says Louis. The Holy Kendo says, I reckon a D for Mikey Johnston. Kieran Gallagher says, or one player that can take players on. They can't take them on for the bench, though. I'm glad we're seeing a lot of consensus here. I've got to say there was people were worried in TMT Towers that I would get this all wrong. Ross Maka says, as things stand, I agree with your D. Vasilis Barkas. I like Barkas. I think he's a good player. I think if Fraser Foster was on this list, I'd be sticking Fraser Foster right there. Right up at the top, elite, I think, if Fraser Foster was here. But we don't have Fraser Foster. We've got Vasilis Barkas, who I think has showed as the games have gone on, he's getting more confident, he's getting more used to his surroundings. I think he's producing some really good performances as the games goes on. One thing he lacks, I think, is a bit that commanding presence that Fraser Foster had. That commanding presence in the box. That being said, I've noticed in the last couple of games he's doing a bit more shouting. But I just want to see more from him. I want to see a bigger set of cojones. What's Greek for cojones? That's what I want to see. I want Barkas to get a big old set of balls on him. Sean Bradley said a solid B. Barkas is a B, says Kieran Gallagher. B for Barkas. B. Everyone's saying B, and that is exactly what I think. I think in Barkas we've got a good player. Jerry Tinney says Barkas is an A. Fraser Foster left as a no, but that doesn't mean they're both the same. Elite. Sean Bradley says elite. If you think Barkas is elite, I'd love to know why. If you think he's elite, I'd love to know why. I've not seen anything from him yet. He was £6 million, came with a decent reputation. The scouting report from Blair was good. You know, excuse me, but I just don't think he's there yet. Barkas is a B, says Kendall. Came into the team right away. Barkas has been B, not had enough chance to prove himself, says Chris. Barkas can only be elite if we use the criteria. The Ajer criteria. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the criteria has to be the same. B, he's another one that I've been checking on updates in international duty, says Ricardo Gorman. Yeah, I think we can all agree he's B. Scott Bain, backup goalkeeper. There was no chance really Scott Bain was going to be anything more than a backup goalkeeper. I think Neil Lennon made that obvious. That he was looking for a goalkeeper as soon as Fraser Foster came in. I'm torn on Scott Bain because I like him. I like Scott Bain, and I think there'll be games where he can contribute. And let me give you my logic on that. I think he could in another world be used in league games or League Cup games that we want to rest Barkas and all that sort of stuff. However, I want Barkas to get as much game time as possible. So in this instance, there's no reason for Scott Bain to contribute in any games. Barkas needs as many games as he can get to get himself up to speed, to get him used to playing at the levels we need him to play for. Most people have got it right, except Philip Bradley, who said C. I can see why you might have said that, but everyone else is talking D's for Scott Bain, and that's it. It's that simple. It's a D. Scott Bain's getting a D. Sub only. Here we are. Lee Griffiths. The most talked about Celtic player this season. Aside from Scott Brown, is Lee Griffiths. Lee Griffiths, if anyone in that chat has the audacity to tell me that Lee Griffiths is a 40 goal a year striker, you'll get tossed out of the Patreon and you're not getting any refunds, because that's so long ago, even Lee Griffiths can't remember it. Jerry Tinney says he's a C. Is there an argument for saying that Lee Griffiths is fourth choice striker at the moment? I think there is. I think there's an argument for saying Lee Griffiths is fourth choice striker. C for Griffiths. B, Stephen Harvey says Lee Griffiths is a good player. I've got to say, I don't really agree with Stephen. I think Lee Griffiths is in this camp here. Lee Griffiths could find himself in this camp here very quickly, though. League Gerald Murphy. I'll read that in a second. Lee Griffith, you distracted me there. Lee Griffith could find himself, I think, very easily in this camp here, if he's not careful. Sub only, but I'm talking myself out of this here. Sub, nah, change my mind. D for Lee Griffiths. Sub only. Most of his that St Johnston game though. And then he's keen at all that, and you don't want that, do you? Help me out here. Should I move Lee Griffiths up? Should I move him up? What's most people saying? C. Most people are saying C here. Aye, okay. Lee Griffiths can contribute. There you go. But just think what's ahead of him. Edouard and Ajeti. Right. I'll take... You know what? I'm going to refer to the chat on this one. Philip Bradley says he's a B. B. No, Sean Butler says he's never a B. Griffith would have been an F until last week, says Louis. We're fickle and that goal showed me that he's C for cocktails. Is Griffiths better than Klimala? Yes. Well, Klimala's up next, so we can talk about Klimala there. Right, okay. C. We're putting him in C. And we'll get a better picture of this when we see the whole squad together. And we'll be able to look at... So Griffiths is in beside him. Mikey Johnston's in beside him, so once it's all come together, we'll have a better idea. Patrick Klimala. Sean Atkins says, C with ability of B in the attitude of D. Patrick Klimala here. Patrick Klimala is the second most spoken about Celtic player behind Scott Brown at the moment. Patrick Klimala is maybe proof that sometimes it does take time to bed in. Just because you have a bad start to the Celtic career. He was unlucky, obviously, with COVID and stuff, but his early performances didn't fill me with any great confidence. Some of his performances at the beginning of this season didn't really fill me with any great confidence. But he's one of these players that every game goes by, it looks like he's getting marginally better. It looks like he's just ever so, just wee percentages here and there, just getting a wee bit better, Does that mean, though, that he reached the potential of a Celtic, elite player? Probably not. A good player? Maybe. Is there a contribution there from Klimala? It's one of those ones, and I think in many ways Klimala and Griffiths are opposites of each other. Griffiths is not taking care of himself off the pitch. He's not really doing it in training. He's not busting his ass to get somewhere. He just thinks, well, if I do it when I'm on the pitch, then that's all that matters. Whereas Klimala is busting his ass behind the scenes. He's went away, put on the weight, shaved the head. He's taking it seriously. And I think if Klimala doesn't make it at Celtic, it won't be down to a lack of effort on his part. It will just be down to a lack of natural ability. And I think I'm going to put him next to him. I think I'm going to put him next to Griffiths. No, I can't. This Griffiths thing's annoying me a wee bit. No, I made my mind up. Klimala's ahead of Griffiths in the pecking order, and that's the end of it. I switched it up there. I've switched it up. C can contribute. C with the potential to become B. D. Gusto Bianco. Klimala's a C, said it months ago. He will score the goal to clinch 10 in a row, and that is a hill I will die on. All above the K train. D. Right. Tell you what, I've put him in C, and he's dislodged Griffiths down to C. Next up, David Turnbull. He has a last-minute winner. The way he took that goal at St Johnston, fantastic. That was a guy who wanted to score. That was a guy who had a point to prove. Bold call. Sean B says, this is a dictatorship. Sean Atkins says he's got so much drive and desire. You need a goal on Sunday. Who would you rather bring on, Klimala or Griffiths? I would rather bring on Griffiths, right? But that's the problem with Griffiths, isn't it? That's the problem with Griffiths. Turnbull is a B. Aidan says, yeah, we're moving on to Turnbull. Look, the decision on Klimala has been made. Turnbull is a B. Turnbull's a C. Says Philip Bradley. There's a lot of people think that David Turnbull is the natural successor for Scott Brown. I don't see that. That's not the case. In terms of style, playing style and all that, he's more like Callum McGregor, Callum McGregor, Ryan Christie type, hybrid type player. But I think he's still one for the future. Kieran Gallagher says D this season potential will be higher. I think he's one for. I think the most of Turnbull's contributions this season are going to be from the. I think he's going to be Turner's as a B. Turner's as a B at Parker's. He's not a B. Turnbull's a C, says Sean Atkins, can improve to be. I think you guys are overestimating. I think you're expecting too much from Turnbull. I think Turnbull, honestly, could be a D. But I think he's pushing into a C. This is where Turnbull is, right? This is Turnbull here, just edging into that, into C. That's Turnbull in a C there. C potential B. I think he's C stroke D. Already had an assist, can contribute. I think he's a C stroke D. Yeah, C stroke B. C for me, Jeff. I think we can agree he's a C. Whether he's on either side of the C, he exists on a spectrum between B and D, as far as you guys are concerned. Michael McDermott, Turnbull can have Christie's first season with game time. Okay, next up is Scott Brown. Scott Brown, the leader of the Celtic. Scott Brown, have his legs gone yet? Scott Brown people just won't shut up about Scott Brown. He is the fault of every poor Celtic performance. He is the man whose legs have gone. And the thing about your legs going, and Stephen mentioned this in the podcast as well, when you listen to other footballers talk, it's quite often not a gradual decline. It's quite often they'll come back from pre-season or an injury or some time off and they'll think, fuck, I've lost a yard. I don't have it anymore. And then they have to call it quits. So that could be the case with Scott Brown. Potentially. I need to turn the brightness up on myself here. There we go. That could be the potential with Scott Brown. However, I don't think Scott Brown has been as bad as people think. And he has been the subject of some ferocious social media debate as of late, thanks to one man who shall remain nameless. But, you know, Scott Brown for the longest time belonged up here. Scott Brown for the longest time belonged up there. Oh, let me just move myself. There you go. That makes more sense, doesn't it? That makes more sense. For the longest time, Scott Brown, where does he go? Belonged up there at the elite level. But really, he could be anywhere here. Soon to be invalid. Brown is elite A. No coincidence he's elite. I'm telling you right now, Scott Brown is not an elite member of the Celtic squad. Maybe last season, the season before, I would have put me. Scott Brown's a good player. He's a good player. I love Scott Brown, right? But he is not an elite member of the Celtic squad as far as I'm concerned. Not this season. Kendall says Scott Brown is a roller coaster this year. When he's good, he's great. When he's bad, he's awful. Look, this could be Scott Brown's season, okay? Right? And then next season, there, right? That could be Scott Brown's season. Right? Right now he's there. He's got a nose there. Right now Scott Brown's got a nose there. For everything that he brings to the Celtic team, it could be elite. But on purely as a player, and his footballing ability, I'm giving Scott Brown a B. Ross Macca says he's not really going to contribute this season. Be most likely good B, bordering on C. Scott Brown's already contributed this season. Scott Brown is already... I'd be interested to see what you guys think Scott Brown lies. Obviously quite a controversial one. But for me, that's it for Scott Brown. He's a good player and I'm not going to have anything else said about it. The Birdsong chart. There we go. Next up, Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy came with a lot of fanfare. Excuse me. Celtic fans buzzing to get him. Big Celtic fan. He's a different type of defender. So far, our squad is rotten. Look at the players still to come in. Can be B with proper management. There's a lot of good players in there, Jerry. Shane Duffy. I've said in the podcast for a while. I'm referencing my own podcast quite a lot, but that's okay. That what we need in centre defence is that dynamic. The Ferdinand Vidic, the Rolls Royce and the Animal, and with Christopher Ajer and Christopher Jullien, we had two very similar players, and I think we have filled that gap with Shane Duffy. I think we've filled that gap with Shane Duffy. I think Shane Duffy's come in. He's a limited defender. But I think he's the missing piece of this central defensive puzzle. And with Shane Duffy coming in, I think it's really, really improved Ajer's game. I think it's given Ajer license to go forward, Ajer license to contribute a bit more. It's also helping out Barkas because he's commanding in the box, something that Barkas isn't. He's a threat up front. Do all these things mean he's an elite member of the Celtic squad, though? Take away the reputation. Take away the reputation of like the international and being a Celtic fan and all that. I think Duffy's a good player. Duffers is a B, says Chris D. Duffy's elite, says Kendall. Senator Docherty says A. A for Duffy could slide into B, says Michael. Gordon's B. Bradley B. Sean Bradley says is a B. Ross Macca says Duffy's a B. Yeah, Kieran Gallagher and Aidan McKee both think he's in it. I think Duffy's a good player, but I don't think he's breaking into that elite. Come on, let's be honest, who's the better footballer, Shane Duffy or Christopher Ajer? I don't mean who's the better headerer of the ball. What I mean is who's the better player. It's Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy is the A to the IR. I don't get that. A, but he's definitely missing the fanfare, the sort of player who would have thrived with fans. Interesting. Too early to call him an A. B plus for me. I think that's a good way to put it, Philip. I think that's a good way to put it. Too early to call him an A. B plus. But by the end of the season, I could be proven wrong and he could be sneaking in here. But he's definitely a good player. Odsonne Edouard. Moving on. No discussion to be had, is there? There's absolutely no discussion to be had about Odsonne Edouard. All I want to hear from now, what I want to hear from at the moment, is anyone who thinks Odsonne Edouard is not an elite player. If you don't think Odsonne Edouard's an elite player, let me know. Put that in the chat. That's all I'm interested in. That is the only thing I'm interested in at the moment, hearing from people who don't think Odsonne Edouard's an elite footballer. I don't think there can be any doubt about it. Odsonne Edouard is a tremendous footballer. He's been off the boil a wee bit recently, but he's a tremendous footballer, tremendous Celtic player. Scotland is far too easy for him. Far too easy for him. Eddie's an A all day long. A. If you think anything else, let me know. Odsonne Edouard's another one who, a bit like Callum McGregor, would get a start on almost any team down south. Elite plus, triple A. We don't even have to discuss it. We don't have to discuss it. Let me just do a bit of rearranging here. Hatem. Oh, in fact, you know what? Next up, Near Bitton. Near Bitton. I think Near Bitton has taken on the Charlie Mulgrew mantle of being the utility guy that plays a couple of positions, and Near Bitton, in my opinion, will come in, play a 6, disappear for 10 games, come in, fill in when needed. There's never really any fuss with Near Bitton. So I think Near Bitton is your typical C. I think Near Bitton's your typical C player. You know, he can contribute. He is a good player. I think he's a good player, Near Bitton, but he's not that good. He's a C. He's a C. And I don't think there can be much argument about it. I mean, yes, he'll be a sub a lot of the time. He'll appear on the bench a lot of the time, but he will start some games and he will contribute and he'll do well. Yeah, Near is a C. I think he's a C, definitely. And I think good would be my first choice at centre-back. But I wouldn't class, he's your first choice centre-back. Near Bitton, he's a bit of an animal at centre-back getting, right enough. I can maybe see where you're coming from, but he's not better than the ones we've got already. Unappreciated, solid C should be a B. If you could keep it, maybe big pictures is a C. Bitton has almost confirmed a place for himself, then gets injured. Near is a C. Or taking Near is a C. Hatem Elhamed, I think, in many ways, is very, very similar to Near Bitton. I think he's a good player. I think he's a bit of a utility guy that can play a number of positions. I think he has trouble keeping himself fit at Celtic. Sorry, I'm reading the chat here. Sorry, I meant to say B if he stays fit, not an A. I don't think Bitton's a B. I think we've moved. It's been decided. We've moved on. We've moved on to Hatem Elhamed. I think those two guys are very, very similar. Very similar in quality, very similar in their ability, and very similar in their style of play. The fact that, as I said, they can play multiple positions. So I think Elhamed belongs right in beside near Bitton there. And if anyone's got anything to say, let me know. But again, he's another one, a bit like Bitton, who's a good player, right? But he's not going to play a lot of football for us. He's a C, and we need players of that quality. Hatem is better than Bitton. He is a good player. I know that. But we need players of that quality that can contribute. See, the problem before I think we had was we didn't have many players in the C category, so it was like A and B, and then it was a down to a D and an F. And I think this season, with the way the squad's been managed, we've got a lot more depth now. Bitton and Elhamed are the same guy. C. I think it's a C. It's a C. Next up, and I'm dreading this one. James Forrest. Next up is James Forrest. James Forrest gets a lot of stick, doesn't he? People think he should be better than he is. I certainly think he should be better than this. He should contribute more in the bigger games. He should contribute more against that lot, against the Huns. But I think he's a very unselfish player. I think and there's another player on the team that I'm going to talk about shortly who shares many of these characteristics. I think he always busts his ass for the team when he's on the pitch, and I like that. His longevity can't be denied. Kieran Gallagher says Forrest is a B. His longevity can't be denied. Forrest is a good player. And I know some people won't think that. I'm not really a Forrest fan, but you can't ignore the amount of goals and assists he gets. If you apply that logic, you apply for Klimala, surely Forrest has to be a B. Yeah, I'm glad to see a lot of you guys are agreeing with me here. I thought I'd have more pushback on this. I thought people want to see Forrest drop down, but I'm glad that you guys, I think Forrest is a good player. Forrest is a good player. Should be elite when he's fit. He's good. He's on that cusp. I think people want Forrest to be up here. People want Jamesy Forrest to be up here. I mean, recently he's not right wing back. He can't play that position, but he's a very good footballer. He hides, and for that he's a C. I actually think the opposite. Philip, I think the opposite. I think if you watch Forrest a lot of the time, the amount of unselfish runs he makes off the ball, pulling defenders away and making space for his teammates. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll change the order here a wee bit so we can blend into it, but I think he gives it all a lot of the time, James Forrest. That's not all the time, though. That's not because he has hidden in the past. But I think, generally speaking, Forrest is a good player. If we'd only brought in Forrest last season, will he still be classed as a B? Or is he a B due to the length of time he's been at the club? Well, you have to give credit for the longevity. Somebody that can sustain, in my opinion, a place in many Celtic squads under many managers. I know the Brendan Rodgers thing, he wasn't really first choice under Brendan for a lot of time. I think you need to credit that longevity a wee bit. Forrest, similar to Elyounoussi in terms of finding a place in this formation, would still count him as a B. I agree with that, he's a B. Greg Taylor is another one who lacks ability, much like James Forrest does sometimes, but gives everything on the pitch. He gives everything on the pitch every time he plays. He's running up and down that wing. He puts in the yards. He tracks back. He's crossing, isn't he? Great. We know Greg Taylor's not the solution to left back problem. We've struggled with this left back position, and we've got Laxalt to talk about here. Bowley wasn't the answer. Greg Taylor, I think, and I know he's played a lot of football for us recently, but I think Greg Taylor, Kieran Gallagher thinks he's a C. Even now that Laxalt's in the building, Taylor's a C, said Aiden. Taylor can contribute on par with Klimala. Okay, you guys, you've charmed me a wee bit here because I was definitely going to put C. I was going to put D rather. I definitely thought Taylor would be a D. Okay, Greg Taylor's a C. Greg Taylor can contribute this season. Taylor is a B until Laxalt proves he's a C. No. See, you're mixing it up, Sean. Greg Taylor could play every game this season and still be an F because we don't have anyone else in that position. So we're grading these guys based on that, not based on who else is there. So, for example, if Frimpong get injured and Forrest get injured, we might end up playing Anthony Rouston at right back all season. He's still an F. He'll do nothing. He's still an F. Taylor's a C. Greg Taylor's a D. Lucky to have played so much. That's what I'm thinking, Louis. Honestly, that's what I think. I think Greg Taylor's really He's a D. He's a D player. He's a D grade footballer, Greg Taylor. Well, let me ask you this before I make the final judgment. Do you honestly think if you're telling me Greg Taylor's a C, do you think Greg Taylor is as good a player as Turnbull, Bitton, and Elhamed? Taylor's a C. Folk forget his assists. That's a controversial one. I really wanted to put him here. I really did. But to keep you guys happy, we'll put him as a C. It's been decided. Greg Taylor's a C. Next up. Where are we? Next up, Olivier Ntcham. Jeez, well, that's nearly an hour. Wowzers. Olivier Ntcham. Let me hear the calls. Let me hear your calls for Olivier Ntcham. Whilst you're making your calls for Olivier Ntcham, I'll just do Luca Connell in the will do nothing, and I'll put him in the will do nothing as well. Greg Taylor. So, Olivier Ntcham was often part of the Scott Brown conversation, wasn't he? People were saying, why is Brown playing when Ntcham's not playing? We need to get Ntcham on the pitch. Philip Bradley says Ntcham's a C or a D by Sean. Jeez, oh. But I think what's happened to Ntcham is one of these ones where not playing football has slightly enhanced his reputation a wee bit, because what I have seen of him, he's not been great. However, Ntcham should be an A, as isn't consistent enough to be a B. I don't know about that. My heart says B, my head says C. Yeah, I think Ntcham's a good player. I think Ntcham's a good footballer. I don't think he breaks into that elite. We saw Ntcham last season, some of the performances in Europe. He's a really, really good midfielder who I think's head is somewhere else at the moment. I think he needs to get his head straight. He needs to play more football, needs to get his head straight. I don't think he's a C. I think he's better than the guys in that C group in there. Ntcham's a B. Philip Bradley doesn't do it enough. He should be an A. I agree, Philip. He should be an A. Ricardo Govin says he's a C. Ross Maka says can contribute C, like Samaras on his day is unplayable when he can't be bothered, the most frustrating player. Senator Doherty, I've already covered you. Ntcham's a B, says Kieran Gallagher. I think Ntcham's a B. Ntcham has the ability of A, but is more of a B or a C. He will contribute, but not as consistent enough to be elite. I think there's something in that, Sean Atkins. Ntcham's a B player, but we've yet to find a system that suits him. So put him in C, says Sean Bradley. Ntcham is a B. Need a big game. He just looks stoned. That's just his style, man. Jeremy Frimpong. Right. Jeremy Frimpong is... I'm putting him in elite. I don't care. I love Jeremy Frimpong. He is, the age of him, he's burst onto the scene. He was brought expecting nothing. Well, barely nothing. Bottom is a project. He's burst onto the scene. I think Jeremy Frimpong is a sensational young player. And he's good, right? But my love for Jeremy Frimpong is pushing him into that elite category. He's a game changer. He's an absolute game changer already at such a young age. Going to say Frimpong's an A, said Aidan. A for Frimmy, says Philip Bradley. Frimpong's a B with the potential to be A. That's what I said, Kieran Gallagher, but it's pushed it. Jeremy, says Senator Doherty. Yep, B for me, but he's knocking on the A. I'm glad we're on the same boat here. This is lovely. Not until he learns to cross and shoot. There's Duco James wanting a fullback to score goals. David Frimpong is a definite A. Hard to argue with the elite. He's got a lot of work to do. Look, he's a good player, but my love for him has pushed him into there, into the elite level. Hard to argue with elite. He's got a lot of work to do, says Sean Bradley. Frimpers is elite. I'm glad we all agree here. Ismaila Soro. The question about Soro is he a D or an F? That's the question on Ismaila Soro. Is he a D or an F? That's all I need to know. Not been too impressed with what I've seen by Ismaila Soro yet. I don't want to use the word raw, but he's raw, isn't he? He's raw. What I'll say about him is Soro's a D. Sub only. What I'll say about Soro is that Klimala sort of given them a pathway, hasn't he? Klimala came, didn't have the best start, and he's sort of breaking himself into the team. Chris McGrath says I'm late. What have I missed? You're absolutely at it, Chris McGrath. Soro will do nothing. An F. And most people agree. Jerry Tinney here, F. Sean Bradley, F. Kieran Gallagher, F. Aye. I don't think there's any doubt that Ismaila Soro is an F. Can't see him doing anything even off the bench, says Ricardo Govin, and you've summed up exactly what I feel about that. I don't see him doing anything at all. D, not good enough to even give him an F. F will do nothing. F, I'm so glad. Ryan Christie is up next. Ryan Christie is one of the most underrated Scottish footballers playing football at the moment. Not in terms of Celtic, but in terms of national coverage. In terms of, I don't think the press in this country give Ryan Christie enough credit for just how good he is. And if Ryan Christie was Spanish or Argentinian or German, they would be caking their pants, writing articles and think pieces about how this creative young footballer has come to this country. And I think the way Ryan Christie plays the game, I think he's really, really intelligent. Oh, 2 people have said Ryan Christie thinks he's an A, but he's really a B. Interesting. I think with the way Ryan Christie plays the game, the space he picks up, he's a threat from set pieces. He can shoot at range. He's got a lovely touch. Remember, guys, we're talking about the Celtic squad. Within the Celtic squad here, Ryan Christie, for me, is an elite Celtic player. That's where Ryan Christie belongs. Top tier. Elite Celtic player. I know a lot of people are coming out with Bs. I put Christie elite game changer for us in so many games. Nobody has his intensity or quality. Kendall, you're saying what I'm thinking. Gordon Hendry thinks he's a C, probably a B overall. Christie's a B. Sean Bradley thinks he's elite. B bordering on elite. I know Christie's a C right now. Sean Bradley, no. Ross Macca says, would love to know why the fans have decided to turn on Christie. An odd one for me as a player, not a person. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one for me as well. But for me, and this is what I'm doing, Ryan Christie's an elite member of the Celtic squad. Next up, Christopher Jullien. Bought last season for big money. Came in as a centre-half, obviously. I think he improved the defence. I think Christopher Jullien is a terrific footballer. Threat from set pieces, as we saw last season. I think he's a bit saft. I think the way he's been bullied by some substandard strikers in the past has dented my thoughts of him. I would be inclined to put him there. And earlier on when I played this game myself, I did have him there. I had him as an elite member of the Celtic team, Christopher Jullien. I can see it maybe sliding down here because, well, help me out here. When was the last tremendous game Christopher Jullien had? Something's went down with him. Honestly, I think he's an A. I think he's A. I do. A lot of people are teetering between B and A. B for ability, D for mentality. I don't know about that. There is a story there. I think we need to relax a wee bit on these players having bad games and all that. I know Neil Lennon doesn't help it. But I think if someone's having some bad games, who's not having a bad game at Celtic at the moment? Sean Bradley says he's not far off elite. We've only got 2 players left to discuss. I put Bitton in twice by accident. We've only got 2 players left to discuss. Albion Ajeti and Diego Laxalt. Next up is Albion Ajeti. For me, let me ask you this question. This is a question I like to put to the guys in the podcast. Celtic need a goal. They need a goal, right? We've got a game. It's a must win. So obviously we need a goal because that's how you win the games of football, obviously. Who are you relying on next week up front? Who are you relying on next week up front to get you that goal? Edouard or Ajeti? Now, it's tough. I know it's tough because here's how the game will play. Edouard will play terrible for 70 minutes and then crop up one absolute beezer of a goal. That's how he plays. Sometimes. Ajeti, though, he's Gary Hooper reincarnated. He's Gary Hooper 1.2. He's my kind of player. He's my guy for this season. I've already said that on the podcast. He's my boy. Forget everybody else. Forget everybody else. I'm a Yeti through and through. Albion Ajeti's a B. Can't say he's elite, but he's lethal up front. Ajeti's a B. Could rise to an A. David McGraw says Ajeti's definitely an A. Jerry Tinney says A. IR11 says B.5. I'm telling you right now, Albion Ajeti belongs in with these guys. He belongs in with those guys. I'm telling you, there's one thing your old dad's got. It's an eye for a player. And I see it with this guy. Double A is an A. Right, go on, that swayed me. A for Ajeti. I'm glad my powers of persuasion. Ajeti's a B, says Kieran Gallagher. Ajeti CC. Who was it earlier on in the chat that says our squad's looking shite? Who was it? Who was it? Ajeti will be elite this season. I agree with you, Christie. Ajeti is elite. Last but not least, and the most difficult one to judge because I've only watched some scouting videos, I've listened and read Blair's scouting report, and I've watched him on YouTube. We've obviously not seen him at Celtic yet. Celtic have obviously tried very, very hard to fill this left-back conundrum. Bowley didn't do it. Greg Taylor's obviously not the answer. We went back in for Laxalt, who we were reportedly after last year. In fact, Melly knows for a fact we were in for him last year. Fullback, AC Milan, looks a good player. I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think we can possibly put him as elite. I don't think we can. Oh, Mark McGregor thinks he's an A. Kieran Gallagher says, I can't believe we've got Ajer and Jullien above Duffy. That's what it's all about, mate. The melting pot. Get all the opinions in there. I don't think we can make Laxalt elite because we've not seen him. We've not seen him. However, we have to make a judgment on this. I have to make a judgment. This is a lot of responsibility for me. I think I hope he's an A, but I'll settle for a B. B. C. Ricardo Govan's just guessing. Team of the World Cup, played in Serie A, at least a B. Holy Kendo. Sealed it for me there. Aye. I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt. His CV looks good. What Kendo just said there. Laxalt should hopefully be a B, but going as a C at this point, says Louis. Kieran Gallagher says B. No, I think we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say Laxalt is a B. And that is us. That is the Jamie from 20 Minute Tims tier maker for the Celtic squad this season. That's what we're faced with. Now, saying that I now feel Taylor is too high. See, this is what happens once it's complete. So, we're coming up for an hour. A nice wee round hour. That was good. Let's hear your final comments on how that squad is shaping up at the moment. Let's hear your final comments. No Karamoko. He wasn't on the... I mean, if Karamoko was on the Celtic website, it'd be at an F. It'd be an F. He's not even a member of the first team, really. I know a lot of those guys in there are not members of the first team, so no Karamoko. He wasn't on the Celtic website, and that's where I took the graphics from. But if he was, he'd be an F. Yeah, let's hear your thoughts. Anything, anyone want no take-backs, says Sean Atkins. No take-backs, but what I will do is I'll listen to some comments about where you think I might be wrong, and then we can talk about it for 5 minutes, and we'll agree that I was right in the first place. If that's what you want to do. No? I think that's a good looking squad. I think the elites are there. I think there's a couple of questions over who could be elite, who could be good. So 2 A's, 1 B's, and 3 C's out for Saturday. Yeah. Yeah, when you put it like that, Ricardo, it's not great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat the link to the tier maker. If anyone wants to give it a go themselves, there we go. Just put it in the chat there. You guys can have that. You're wrong about Griff. Okay, Philip Bradley. Where should Griffiths be? Let's hear it. Said it already. Very harsh on Duffy. He's a number one centre-back already. I know that. I know what you're saying, Kieran Gallagher. But I think he's not as good a player as the other guys. That's just how I feel about it. Duffy below Jullien doesn't sit right. A lot of people are freaking out about this Duffy. A lot of people are freaking... Duffy and Jullien should be swapped. Right, okay. Okay. Here's the closing arguments for you, right? This is mine. This is my decision, right? But what I'm going to do is, if you think I should swap Duffy and Jullien, give me a hell yeah in the chat, right? Let me see the chat. If you think I should swap Duffy and Jullien, give me a hell yeah. Jerry Tinney, who's the last one left out? That's near Bitton. That's near Bitton. That's twice, but he's already in it. The graphic duplicated itself. And that's that. That's that. There's a couple of obviously there's a couple of people think that we should be swapping some players in and out. Griffiths could be a C. I just don't like Lee Griffiths so much. But I think Sean B says hell yeah. There we go. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change. Hell yeah. No. You guys make your own. You guys make your own. I'll put this in the Discord for you. You guys can make your own. I'm going to screenshot this and put it into the group chat with Melly and Stephen and wait for Melly's feedback. Peter Diamond says hell yeah. That's the first thing. I think that's the first time he's commented. Gusto Bianco says hell yeah. Right, fuck you guys. Fine. Right, okay, fine. There we go. There you go. You happy? Are you happy? Absolutely disgrace. Absolutely, I can't believe you peer pressured me on my own podcast to switch those about. Right, that's it. Senator Dogty. Okay, I've done it. Right, I've done it. You peer pressured me, and that's it. Are these official stats? Aye, this is exact. You know, see what happens before every transfer window. Neil Lennon sits down, and they play this wee game, and then they see where they've got to fill it in. That's how Celtic do their transfers. This is what Nicky Hammond brought to Celtic. If I think Jullien should join Duffy on B, that's enough. That's enough. Right, guys, that's it. I just want to say thank you very much for joining me. I had a lot of fun doing this. If you like this sort of thing, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments below. Let us know on Patreon, though. That most importantly, jump back onto Patreon if you can and leave a wee comment on this post, just to let other people know that it was enjoyable and it was a good thing. And I really appreciate it. Thanks very much for joining in. Thanks for all your comments and concerns. They were very funny. I'm going to take this. I'm going to edit it a wee bit, put it on YouTube. So if anybody had to drop out or you came halfway through or whatever, Melly and Stephen would never. Gusto Bianco says, yes, peer pressure, CSE. No, you're right. You're right. Melly and Stephen would never. And on that bombshell, that's the final decision. That's the final decision. He's had it and you fucked it. You had it. You had me where you wanted me. And then you started mocking me. Thanks very much, Philip. Cheers, guys. Cheers, Ricardo. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This live stuff is a bit daunting and a bit weird. Thanks, Uncle Jamie. Cheers, Senator Doherty. Yep, thanks. That's not weird. Shane Duffy, CSC. Thanks, guys. I'm going to finish up now. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me, and I'll talk to you very soon. Fuck the Huns.